Okay, the Fairfax County School Board Comprehensive Planning and Development Committee is now called to order at 7:05 p.m. On Monday, February 10th, 2025, Governor Youngkin declared a state of emergency due to severe weather conditions expected in many areas of the Commonwealth. In view of that declaration and the ensuing weather emergency that has made it impracticable or unsafe to assemble a quorum of the membership in a single location, this committee is meeting by electronic means today through the Zoom platform with public access provided through the FCPS page on YouTube. You can also access the YouTube live stream and copies of any items or supporting materials being presented today by visiting www.fcps.edu/board-docs. You may also access the live streaming on the FCPS website, https://www.fcps.edu/streaming-meeting. Okay, agenda item 1.02, approval of minutes. The minutes of the January 16th, 2025 CPDC meeting are before the committee for approval. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes, or do you need a moment to take a quick look at them?
A moment will be helpful.
Okay, so we'll just take 2 minutes so you can read through the minutes. Kevin, while we're reading through the minutes, I just wanted to make sure, since we're meeting electronically, normally when we're meeting in person, we have to, make a motion to allow people to attend remotely. But that isn't the case with this meeting, correct?
Correct. Due to the state of emergency, the all virtual meeting is allowed. We will just note the location of each member in the minutes
Okay.
of this meeting. Yep.
And those locations were previously provided to you before the meeting, correct?
Correct.
Uh, Ms. Pitches and Dr. Anderson, do you need additional time to review the minutes, or are you good to proceed?
I raised my hand to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Great. Okay. Agenda item 1.03, update on motions from the January 16th, 2025 CPDC meeting. So I would like to entertain a discussion with respect to the motions that we passed at the last session. And if to refresh your recollection, the motions are listed on page 3 of the minutes that we just approved. So we requested that there be 2 work sessions. The first that would be on design, build, and construction management at-risk methodologies, along with opportunities for commercial office space conversion and optimizing or utilization of existing FCPS school assets. That was the first work session. And the second work session that we requested to the chair and the vice chair is a work session on public-private partnerships and swing spaces. So the second work session is of particular relevance because in addition to that first motion I just covered, the second motion listed on page 3 of the minutes, we referred to FPAC, the Public-Private Partnership Cost-Benefit Analysis Study that was presented by FCPS and the staff response. And we asked FPAC to prepare an analysis, recommendation, and response to be delivered in advance of the relevant work session. Now I'm at somewhat of a disadvantage because Katie Herman, the chair of FPAC, is not in attendance.
No, I'm here in her stead.
Okay, great.
Matteo, so I am
I
here.
didn't see you, Kathy. Great.
Yeah, I'm
So
hiding.
so here's the question. The chair has scheduled, we requested 2 work sessions. Both work sessions have been scheduled for the same day, May 6th. I had a brief conversation with Katie Herman, the chair of FPAC, and asked whether FPAC would be able to complete its work, its analysis of the public-private partnership cost-benefit analysis study and the staff response in advance of the May 6th work session. And she indicated probably not. And so there are a couple different options, and there may be more options that than I realize. But the basic question comes down to do we want FPAC to complete its analysis before we hold a work session to consider the public-private partnership report and the staff assessment? Because again, May 6 has 2 work sessions that we requested. The first on construction management methodologies, commercial office space conversion, and optimization or utilization of existing FCPS assets. That could proceed on May 6. But we could, if CPDC is interested, request the chair to delay the second work session until a later date, so that we can have the benefit of the FPAC analysis that we made by the motion last time. I'm not recommending that. I'm open to either approach. I have spoken with the chair, and what the chair has stated is that other than May 6th, there are no open dates for work sessions this school year. So that would result in that second work session, which covers public-private partnerships and swing spaces. And remember, swing spaces is, about building new school buildings on existing school grounds while, instead of doing phased construction or using trailers, modulars, or alternate locations for schools. So we could delay that second work session if CPD is interested until a later date when we have the analysis. That would have to be sometime in the fall though. And when that would be scheduled would be up to the new chair and vice chair who get elected in, I think it's June. That's based on what Mr. Frisch conveyed to me. So I wanted to open the floor to discussion to understand whether the committee prefers to proceed with both work sessions on the same date, May 6th, or and I'm almost done, I promise, or proceeds to delay the second one to a later date. And I'll just mention, just for your awareness, those 2 work sessions, the first one has a lot of topics in it. The second one, swing space and public-private partnership, also very dense. And I've been told, I haven't seen the agenda for May 6th, but I've been told there's another topic that is also scheduled for May 6th. So it's a whole lot of subject matter to cover in one day. So with that, Ms. Dixit, you have the floor.
So I want to continue as planned with this session on May 6th, at least the first part of it, because we will be changing committees and some of us will not be on the committee that in the next school year. And at least we would like to continue the work we have started here, and just see where it goes. And there's any estimated date we have received from the chair of PAC when they can have the cost benefit analysis back to us?
Ms. Herman said June, but Ms. Hozick, do you have a different response to that question or different information than I had understood previously?
Probably Katie would know best, but I'm going to say since our retreat was going to be in February, but now it's going to be in March, there is a good chance that we have 2 work sessions between now and then. And I know one of the subcommittees, I'm not sure it's that one, but that they possibly could be meeting on the 17th of February. Yeah, that's right. 17th of February, our normal work session day. So there's a chance that it could still happen because we also have the retreat. And if we put that on our agenda to focus on getting those out, that's mid-March, March 15th. So I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouth because I'm not on either of those 2 subcommittees, but I do feel like we've been talking about it for a while. So it's not like you just handed us these topics and we have to start from scratch. So I don't want to say a definite no, but I do agree with Seema that you guys are already into this topic, so it would be nice. But I also am concerned if there's a lot of other meat on May 6th, I want to give these topics the attention they need. So, I mean, I'm not really sure what to tell you. It's possible with the retreat still not having happened, because that was going to happen next weekend, but we had to move it. So I think now that we've pushed it back, that still is like basically another working day, and we have our regular meeting. So possibly.
Ms. Dixit, did you have further comments or can I move on to the next panelist?
Yes, please move on.
Okay. Dr. Anderson?
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that it is very helpful to have the analysis of the committee of FPAC, but because these are very heavy and technical topics, I think it will be great to have more than one bite at the apple. So this is my long way of saying I think we need to proceed with the work session because that might help us to even further digest or better digest what the committee has to offer whenever it is that occurs. I just think we just need to start looking at these issues, and because they're so difficult, we may need to come back to them anyway. So building understanding on May 6th, I think will be important. So I would prefer to proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Pitches, do you have any comments?
No, it's your work session. I don't have to sit
Okay.
through it. So whatever you guys think is best for your board. But I will say it looks like quite a lot of information, but I agree with your 2 board members that if it was me, I would definitely keep at least some of it on that May date.
Okay. Ms. Szymanski, I just wanted to offer you the opportunity to express any views that you may have on the agenda for May 6th.
No, I'll give deference to the board, but I do think there's a lot of information already present that you could start getting into, and then to the others' points, have that supplemented in a subsequent meeting with FPAC's analysis.
Thank you. Ms. Hozick, you still have your hand up. Do you have additional comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I agree with both of the board members, and I feel like if the memo is not able to be used at that session, perhaps the FPAC members could use that session to further pad their memo and build on the things that are said in that May 6th work session. So it's advantageous to have it both before and after because they can build on the information that is shared at that point.
Great. Okay, well, I think we seem to have a consensus, and so leaving things status quo doesn't require any action, so we can, without objection, move on to the next agenda item. So agenda 1.04. The Facilities Planning Advisory Council has advanced to CPDC a revised FPAC charter inclusive of revisions responsive to our feedback at the January 16th, 2025 meeting. I call on Kathy Hozick for an overview of the FPAC discussion and vote.
Okay. Let's see. So yes, we had the history. You guys all know you were at the meeting. Katie did make changes that were requested at the January 16th CPDC meeting. And one additional minor change that FPAC added was to add page numbers to make it a little more clear in case somebody prints it and gets it out of order. And then we all took a vote and we approved it unanimously. So, I mean, we've been working on this. We've seen at least 3 versions of a draft and we've had months of opportunity to comment. I know Katie has sent it around it several times. So I think we're ready for you guys to take it and send it to the full board. And if there's any questions, I'll try and field them, but I feel like we're in a pretty good place.
So just to address a couple comments, and then I can address any questions that folks may have or comments they want to make. I believe Mr. McDaniel and Ms. Dixit and I think everyone had some thoughts, but I know one of the issues was that last time on the agenda, the red line was not not a red line of the existing charter, but was a red line compared to a revised charter. And so it was difficult to assess what changes had been made compared to the existing. And so I'll just observe that on board docs, the existing charter from that was approved in 2015 by the board is there. And then there's a red line comparing all the proposed changes to
I think Mateo is frozen.
Oh, okay, he is. I thought my
I think you're
volume
right.
went
It's
out.
very windy. He's like a neighborhood over from me and the wind is whipping around here. So he could have,
Oh, same thing here behind me. That's why I keep muting
yeah,
myself.
yeah, exactly.
We'll just give him an opportunity to check back in, to log back on,
He
rather.
may, he may be able to pop in on his phone too, because that's probably charged, hopefully.
I'm gonna try to see if I could call him on his phone. This is gonna make this a very challenging meeting.
Yes.
Looks like he's logging back on.
Hey, I'm trying to get back on.
Okay.
All right, let's make sure everybody can hear you. I've got you on speaker.
Thank you. So last time so now we have a red line comparing the original 2015 charter that was approved by the board to showing the changes that are proposed by F. And last time there was also an issue that there wasn't a clear vote taken by FPAC in a formal way. Instead, it was through a consensus process. I believe. Can you hear me now? Thank you. And last time, FPAC had not taken a formal vote, but instead used a consensus process. And now there's been a formal vote. FPAC has formalized its meeting proceedings and making motions, seconding motions, taking formal votes, and those are reflected in the minutes for FPAC meetings. So are there any other changes that you wanted to bring to the attention of CPDC, Ms. Hozick?
No, I think that we pretty much covered them all.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Ms. Dixit, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Pitches? No? Okay. Then the proposed revision to the FPAC charter are now before the committee for consideration. We can review the draft in its entirety or entertain any motions, including amendments. Does anyone? Okay, Ms. Dixit?
Yeah, I just had a question. Actually, it's about one of the paragraphs at the end. Last time we didn't, I think, go all the way down till the end of it. My only question was that, there was like a lot of, look at the last page of the red line version. There is a lot of points, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like all of them were just kind of reduced to 2 lines. I just wanted to understand the reason behind that. That this must be something wasn't, FPAC used to do before, and now they're not doing it anymore. If somebody can, just talk about that.
Are you talking about the things on page 5?
Yes, that's correct. The
The
last page.
items. Okay, let me make the screen bigger so I can see them all. Because I feel like the reason we did that, well, because that refers to the annual report, which now will consist of an compiling of our memos, because we're kind of going to change the way we bring work to the school board. I don't know that we've really ever done a self-evaluation. I think we looked at these and we said, this doesn't really apply to the work we're currently doing, which is why we wanted to work with CPDC to make sure that you guys have a say in what the work is that we're doing. Um, um, like a work plan identifying and prioritizing matters for FPAC review. I mean, at the beginning of the year, we used to sit and we would all pick topics that we felt like were relevant to the school board. I don't recall the school board tasking us. Like, I really like that, Mateo has said, I want to know about P3s. I want to know about swing spaces. Like, it gives us some direction. Because our topics were kind of all over the place. So by taking these out, this kind of it didn't really hinder us, but it didn't really help us. So we just felt like it was a lot of words that didn't really help us do our mission. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question, but
Uh, Yeah, it does. The only point I would make is that then what is the charge of FPAC? How does it like every year? How do you start the year if you don't have you need direction from the board if every year before you start? Usually, I was on a different advisory committee, and that committee used to decide what you would like to pursue for that year, and it could be independent of what school board wants. So maybe you could enlighten me on that. And also, is this somewhere it's written now in this version that school board is going to direct FPAC and for the work to be done in the committee?
sure. If you look at page 3, we tried to capture that there, and we did talk about like the different things, because we would, we try and do like the jet goals. They were important to the school board, so we made them important to us and we researched them. The Q and the CIP, like we try and stay informed about that, because that's a huge part of your work, and we want to be able to advise you as school board members if you have questions about those things, to give you another conversation that you can be like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought about it that way, right? So, and it does say as determined by the school board. It does not say in here like when you give them to us. But I feel like if we say in the fall and then something comes up in January, oh, the charter says you can only give them to us in the fall. Again, we didn't want to handcuff anybody by saying that's what the charter says. So we kind of left it a little open. We listed topics. We took out the are not limited to, because we didn't want to say, oh, these are the 8 things that FPAC can talk about. Because there will be other things like maybe solar, right? Like there are different pieces of your work that we want to be able to advise you on when we can. So, and I don't know what that timeline looks like. Maybe that's a Mateo or whoever the CPDC liaison is next year. Maybe they determine when that is, or it's a rolling basis. I'm not sure. But we just were trying to standardize it a little bit, because I don't recall in all of my years on FPAC and the 3 years I went before I was a member, them ever saying, here's what the school board wants us to work on specifically. So
All right,
we would
understand.
love to have that direction.
You're good with this response. I'm satisfied. Lastly, is it then what would be the annual report and be entail when we are, so if we are asking you ad hoc basis that could you give us this report by the before our work session, could you give us something, then what would be the annual report consist of?
Correct. So what we're envisioning, since we're kind of moving down a new path, because it used to be we would pick our 4 or 5 topics, we'd all break into groups, we'd work on that topic all year. This way, Mateo was really good last year. He needed a memo like turned around really quick, so we focused on that and we did it. And it's not just Mateo, anybody, any school board member, because we're a school board committee, right? I mean, they would probably go through CPDC, but they could say, hey, I want to know more about X. This seems like something FPAC could do. Mateo could say, sure, or whoever needs to approve it, get it to us, and then we start looking at that topic. So at the end of the year, we're going to do a compilation of all of the memos that we've done for that past year. And if, like, let's say this year we're talking about P3s, next year we talk about it again, and we reference that prior P3 memo that we did, we would roll that into our report or at least reference it with a link so that you're not like, what? They did another report? Like we're trying to string the information along so it's not like you're hunting for a needle in a haystack. So that's where I envision this going. But again, and it's kind of fuzzy right now. So we're hoping that this charter rewriting gives us a little more direction as to what our work is and how we get our tasks and how we report them to you. So we would compile them at the end of year. Oh, and we also used to do a mid-year report, which we weren't really done with our work. So it kind of was like, well, here's what we're working on. And they'd go, okay. And then we'd be like, okay. There wasn't really like, oh, we didn't really want to learn about solar panels. Right. So there wasn't a lot of feedback, and we would love to have more interaction and actually do the work that the school board would like us to help with. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure.
I'll also mention that last year, the annual report, I mean, there's a cover memo of sorts, but they also included as appendices to that different memos that they prepared last year that were circulated to the school board. Dr. Anderson.
Thank you. Just one quick question. There is nothing in here that prevents the school board from providing a charge to the committee, right, Kathy?
Not that I know of. I don't know what that would look like since we've never really gotten a direct charge from, because somebody said to me, wow, Mateo is giving you a lot of charges. I'm like, I believe any school board member can, but like you said, it's not really in the charter. I don't know that it needs to be, has to be, but I would love for the board to understand better how FPAC can help you in your work. Because I remember when I first got on the committee and I did my first 2x2s, and people they loved the CIP, they didn't know anything about it. And we talk about it all the time, and we would love to be able to help new members. Oh, you want to know that? It's right here on this page, right? Like kind of help you guys however you need it. And Mateo could answer this better than I. I don't know how Riccardi has this great idea. How does she get it to FPAC? Like it helps that you're on CPDC, but what if Carl had an idea? Can he bring it? I don't know what that looks like because it's not really ever happened.
Sure. And I think I was asking more as a matter of technicality because none of the committees does the board sit and write a charge and say, this is what you must do. The committees essentially bring forward suggestions for the board's review and approval in terms of what they'll take on in the following year. And so if there was something that was a burning topic that FPAC wanted to tackle, they could just present that in the way that is typically done for the board's consideration. I'm comfortable with how this is written because it seems as if we can have the best of both worlds. We can have these timely memos and we can have a charge by the board. And while individual things can be raised as a matter of interest to from individual board members, it really does need to be a collective board direction to the committee to take on. So I wanted to make sure that I said that. But initially, I did raise my hand to make a motion to approve this document. I'm very thankful for the changes that were made and very, very appreciative of the clear and explicit support of the committee via the vote.
Is there a second? Ms. Dixit, Dr. Anderson, do you have any comments on your motion?
No, thank you.
Ms. Dixit, do you have any comments on your second?
No.
Before we proceed to a vote, I just wanted to mention that I just wanted to clarify that the revised FPAC charter on page 3 says the below matters are within the purview of FPAC as determined by the school board and it lists 1 through 7. And then number 8 is other matters as directed by the FCPS school board. So certainly the work is subject to direction by the school board, and that can be conveyed by the school board as a whole or by CPDC as a committee overseeing FPAC. And I think in last year, I appreciate Ms. Hozek's description, but generally the work that was requested was discussed in CPDC meetings with Dr. Anderson was on the committee, Ms. Lady was on the committee, Ms. Pitches was on CPDC last year. And so these were not flights of fancy that I may have had as an individual school board member, but matters we discussed in CPDC, and we took a more informal approach to providing direction to FPAC. This year, I think we have moved in a more formal direction because last CPDC meeting, we made a specific motion and we did provide formal direction through an approved motion for FPAC to provide feedback on the public-private partnership report and the staff response. So, perhaps that was my fault last year that we were more informal than necessary, but we can be more formal going forward. And I think one of the benefits of this FPAC charter is, it's been 10 years, and I think one of our colleagues has emphasized we should be looking at all of our policies at least every 10 years. But also, the annual charge doesn't really work in a fast-moving world, and especially given the many challenges we have from a construction renovation infrastructure maintenance perspective. So I appreciate that this will enable more timely and responsive action by FPAC. So with that, I'll call for the vote. Well, let me make sure I'm doing the right script. All in favor? Oh, it looks like everybody's in favor. Great. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Okay, so with that, we will move on to the next agenda item, 1.05, infrastructure policy development. And we don't have any documents for this, but there last April 2024, there was a report delivered to the board in response to a motion brought by Ms. Marin and Ms. Sizemore Heiser, recommending or outlining a path for the development of an infrastructure policy. And wanted to put this on the agenda so we could maybe ask Ms. Szymanski to kind of discuss what is an infrastructure policy, because we've talked a lot about infrastructure, including the recent CIP work session, and just clarifying what is meant with that, what is within the scope, and maybe what that has looked like in prior school divisions where she's worked. Ms. Szymanski?
Sure. Would it be helpful if I just at a high level walked the group through our response?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. So basically, at a high level, back in February of 2024, per the CIP, we were instructed via follow-on to do a plan to create an infrastructure policy. And so our response is what a plan could look like. And I believe as part of the directive, the plan was we were instructed to look at the current list of relevant policies and corresponding regulations. And specifically, there was a list of 27 that we were asked to look at. And the follow on also asked for basically like a high level recommendation on what should be updated, what should be integrated or created or retired, basically an action on what to do with that to just create overall a policy for our infrastructure that would work, right? As part of that too, we were asked to give like a date and a timeline for how we would do that. So there were 27 policies, staff took a look at all of those, and then we did engagement, not just amongst our own team, but with other teams across the division, since it actually affects not just facilities, but other work too. So doing that, we asked them a series of questions. You can kind of see how we interviewed them and whatnot. And, we sent to the board just some key themes. So, a few policies had been updated, we found. There were many policies that still needed updating and some that were in process. So it just seemed like everything was in a varying state. There were some that we noticed would probably have to address specifics to Virginia code. So we want to keep that in mind and think about the legal review process of any policy from our shop. And we did kind of note we would probably want to then like look to best practices and what other infrastructure policies could look like, but too much consolidation could become a little unwieldy. So those were just some of the thoughts that we had. We developed a bit of a timeline, again, wanting to make sure we had blessing from the school board with this plan, and then probably take about 6 months for us to do an honest red line of all of them. And then lastly, that we did as part of this follow-on was, we took the 27 as part of the follow-on motion. We also identified another 31 policies, school board policies that we think were relevant. And so the ones in yellow were the ones directed by the school board. The ones in white on the table were the ones that we also found. And then corresponding regulations and notices as well. And then basically did a high level review and just kind of gave it one of those 4 statuses outlined in the follow-on motion, if you will. Like, does it need to be integrated? Does it need to be updated? What have you? And so that was just the foundation of our plan. And, curious to hear the board's thoughts if that's an approach that makes sense. Yeah, that's a high level overview of what we've done to date.
So can I just clarify, because when I hear like the word infrastructure policy, that's like singular, and it sounds like something new, like something that would, have the title infrastructure policy, right? But it sounds like you've identified 27 existing that were listed plus 31. So you're talking about 58 existing
Yes.
school board policies. So are we are you do you have in mind that you would create a new like umbrella policy for infrastructure covering like tracked and untracked assets or something like that, or some kind of queue? Or are you just is your and again, I'm just trying to understand, like, get my arms around what this is. Are you thinking that it's just the 58 policies, 27 plus 31, that, just need to go before governance committee and then kind of in some kind of schedule or order be updated to reflect changes to Virginia code or other changes that facilities wants to implement?
Yeah, it's a good question because we kind of grappled with that when we were looking at it. And I do think a lot of these policies that relate to facilities and relate to infrastructure also touch other things, from student registration, you name it, right? So we did have some concerns with just wrapping that under one giant policy. It could become a little unwieldy, and as different components need to be updated, that could be difficult. However, we did notice a lot of things needed to be updated, and it could be a good opportunity to kind of take a holistic view, and then maybe, yeah, we do condense and tighten up some of them where it makes sense. And because you're looking at them all at once, you can kind of do that a little bit more strategically, was our thought.
Dr. Anderson?
I was hoping that we could display, because I don't see it in board docs, the form that, or rather the document that Ms. Zeminski was just referring to. So that was my first thought. So if that's possible, at least post it. That would be very helpful so it could connect to this discussion, even though I know it exists elsewhere. Secondly, what I wanted to share is being on the governance committee along with Ms. Dixit. We've had now at least 2 discussions regarding our approach to the policy work. And a couple of the things that Ms. Zeminski shared are fully in alignment with that, which is for it to be comprehensive and holistic. In lieu of the current practice and past practice of reviewing, a policy here and there and not really having clarity on how it relates to other like policies. The idea is to bundle them up together and just review that as a body of work because each informs the other. It makes it more aligned, it makes it more consistent. It just really provides a full picture of all of the pieces of the policy. And I would imagine that such work would result in perhaps some collating of those policies, retiring some and, keeping others. Not to the point where we have one big giant policy because that makes it a handbook that nobody can get through and you'll still end up with the same things in multiple chapters, but to the point where it's fully connected in terms of content and formatting. One of the things that the governance committee had talked about, again, ad nauseum, is each of the policies is so widely different from each other in terms of the content, the title pieces, the heading. Some have mission, some have purpose, some have goals. It's so very different, and we are looking for that consistent and uniform formatting that every policy can be slotted into. We've had a very good presentation today by VSBA regarding policy work. And I think that's going to be integral to the conversations that the governance committee has on Tuesday. Having said that, I did want to share, I'm very much in support of the effort that Ms. Zeminski has outlined, which is taking some time to really redline and have the policies speak to each other and inform the work in a manner that is holistic. I don't know what is it that you're looking for us to accomplish in this part of the conversation, but these are the comments that I wanted to offer in support of this work, and hopefully not just for CIP, but for each of the other components for which there are policies in FCPS.
Ms. Dixit or Ms. Pitches, I didn't know if you had any comments.
I'm good.
I'm
Okay.
good, Mateo.
Thank you. My goal was just to understand what because I participated in the discussion. Well, I didn't speak at all, but I watched and the governance committee the other day, and so I just wanted to understand from a CPDC perspective, what is the direction of this infrastructure policy and what does that mean, so that we will have reflected in our minutes that we discussed it, understood it. But certainly we defer to the governance committee as, the policy development revision committee. But to the effect that, CPDC issues are involved, then, wanted to make sure we were apprised of that by Ms. Zeminski. So with that, we can move on to agenda item 1.06, the Herndon Elementary School renovation permit update.
Sure. I can't remember when it was. I think it was back in January. I put forth a Friday letter to Dr. Reed to give the board an update on the Herndon permit. I just thought I felt responsible to at least inform the board of what was going on. We've had some permit challenges with that project. Just to take you back in time, that permit was for Herndon Elementary School renovation. It doesn't go through the county, it actually goes through the town of Herndon for approval, and we submitted that permit back in March of 2023. And so we've had about 5 rounds of comments, and we're at a point where the project really needs to go out to bid to maintain an on-time schedule, to be at a good advantageous part in the marketplace. And so we actually have the project out to bid right now, and we are still wrapping up one of the components of that permit. It was a little bit of an unforeseen from us. In one of the comment rounds, the county asked for a few different easements. 2 of those 3 easements required have been obtained at this point and are checked off. The big one that threw us off guard was an offsite easement, so it was not a property of ours, but we were asked to obtain it in order to get our permit. And so we actually been working back and forth with that homeowner. They had language in their mortgage that they couldn't do any of this work for the first year of their mortgage, so that put us really behind in terms of schedule. So that time's now elapsed, and we're working with them now. The actual documents, I believe, are in the trustees' court to sign, and so that way we can hopefully get everything back to the town. I believe by the end of next week. So that's good. I do think there is a light at the end of the tunnel, which will coincide with our bidding. The project's bids aren't due until early March and wouldn't be going on the agenda for school board approval till the end of March. But I just felt like it was just doing my due diligence to let you guys know what was going on, that it was going to be tight. And we had been trying to escalate with the town of Herndon. We had actually requested we could get like a conditional approval and then say, hey, while we work this out, with this homeowner, we weren't expecting to have to do maybe, we don't get a certificate of occupancy or we don't mobilize, but you at least let us, keep going with the process. But they really wanted to see this easement obtained or see how that plays out. They weren't, in support of that as of the last few emails and phone calls we made as, late as yesterday, I believe. So that's where we are, but I do feel optimistic that if we can cross through this one last easement piece, we'll be okay.
May I ask, is the offsite easement something related to the school buildings, or is this totally unrelated that might be the town of Herndon exceeding their regulatory jurisdictional authority?
Yeah, my team, without really knowing too much of the technicalities, they said it really doesn't pertain much to our work. It's not like our work is impacting that homeowner or the easement that they need.
And this was at the request of the town of Herndon that we're doing this?
That's correct.
And has there been any consultation with legal counsel about whether they can actually require us to do this?
I do believe they can require it. So yes, like we are not able to obtain the permit until we've satisfied all their comments. And it's their interpretation that they want us to get this.
Okay. Well, I guess it's their population's elementary school that's affected, right? Dr.
Correct.
Anderson?
Thank you. My questions were along those same lines, but can you give a little bit more clarity? What exactly is the work they're looking to have on this offsite in this person's home?
I believe it's some sort of utility line that runs through their home, and they want an easement or an access easement. I think I could probably find out more information on what specifically it is, but at a high level, they just want an easement on that homeowner's property. And it's adjacent to us.
Thank you.
For an electric line?
Probably some sort of utility easement.
Okay. Moving on, agenda item 1.0.
Mr. Dunn.
Sorry, I
Carolyn
apologize,
has
Ms.
her
Fitches.
hand up.
Oh, you're fine. I was just gonna say, I just had to give an easement to Dominion Energy for Fairfax High School to have access to they're going to be moving the poles. It's probably something similar, Janice, I would think that, and a lot of people, when it's personal property and they hear the word easement, then they
Yeah.
think they're giving up their property that, that you guys are going to take it, and that's not what it actually means. So people can be a little
Yeah, there's been a lot of back and forth. And actually, ironically, we had to get a Dominion easement for our property as well as part of this. And that was another one of their requirements. But we actually did get that one. That one I know has been checked off at this point. It's the adjacent homeowner.
Yeah, it tends when it's private property, people, it's hard for them to understand that the easement, they're not giving up their property, forever to the school system. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah.
We have two agenda items 1.07, 1.08. I don't think there's much content to be discussed tonight on these items. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Ms. Dixit, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I wanted to just ask, and maybe I'm new to this committee, do we discuss all the different high schools or elementary school construction queue and permitting issues? That's a part of this committee?
No, we
Okay.
don't.
Just curious why this particular school issue. I mean, Centerville High School is having their own issues, but that's not CPDC discussing here.
I think it was included in a Friday letter, so it was suggested for inclusion on the agenda so that we just understand if there might be broader issues that apply to other schools. But if you'd like to include Centerville High School or any other schools on the agenda for, I'd have to defer to Kevin whether we can amend the agenda for this meeting to have Ms. Szymanski provide an update. Kevin, can you advise?
So it wasn't noticed, so we could discuss it, but we could take no act. The committee couldn't take any action on that.
Ms. Dixit, would you like to have information provided by Ms. Szymanski on Centerville High School or any other
Yeah,
schools?
I think is as a part of this committee and a lot of people who are also involved in FPAC, people should know what's going on with Centerville High School.
Okay, Ms. Szymanski.
Sure. As you know, there's been a series of Friday letters. The challenge with Centerville is that right now, even the building as it stands without renovating or adding to it exceeds the floor area ratio or like the density essentially of the building. And so we have now gotten to the point where we've really well developed the design drawings and submitted them for permit, but we're not going to be able to obtain that permit because it doesn't meet that zoning requirement. So we have been trying to work with the Park Authority on doing a lease for FAR at the adjoining park. There had actually already been a land lease for this FAR from 40 years ago, but it expired in 2018. And as you know, there were two pieces of property 40 years ago as part of that transaction. However, we've written a series of letters saying, hey, we still feel like this needs to be renewed at no additional cost. Additionally, we feel like the FAR is only a value to us and not elsewhere in the marketplace. So we're not quite seeing eye to eye on the consensus on what fair market value actually is. As you know, we got the board's temperature on Cub Run because that was expressed in correspondence to us that they desired a lease or obtaining Cub Run site. Because we know that's not in the interest of the board, we are a bit of an impasse on that. We've been doing a little bit of design work, but we're at a point where I actually submitted to Dr. Reed earlier this week, just like a memorandum on what some options can be. So I'm working on that with her and hope to share that with the board because at some point I think we've taken this project as far as it can without some other resolution, either doing a project somewhere else for it or pausing the project while we figure out the zoning and the zoning ordinance more holistically. So I want to get those, in front of her or blessed by her. And then I'd like to probably give them to you guys in an upcoming Friday letter.
Thank you, Ms. Minsky. That was really insightful. And I think CPDC and FPAC members here, our Ms. Catherine Hozak, will appreciate this information.
I really appreciate your suggestion, Ms. Dixit, that CPDC include as regular agenda items, updates on, projects that may be encountering significant permitting or other obstacles. I wonder if I could ask, I don't think we could make a motion tonight, but maybe just ask Ms. Samansky informally going forward to perhaps just have your staff provide like a list of kind of projects that are currently underway and with particular highlights to any that are problematic and just, where things are moving. And I don't know what that looks like. We can, I welcome the thoughts of committee members. Dr. Anderson?
Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to share, as somebody who's been on CPDC probably way too long, for 5 of my 6 years,
Wow.
had 1 year away. It's stunning to hear that. It's also been a space where when individual board members who have projects in their areas can come to CPDC to do exactly this. I remember a couple of years ago, Ms. Tolan brought to CPDC the Kent Gardens project. And at the time, Chuck Fanshaw, who was the Janice Saminsky and the whole committee, as well as FPAC, they were able to provide some additional feedback and information for consideration in terms of next steps. At that same meeting, I brought forward Glasgow Middle School, where it's just to bring the things that are happening in our community. So it's a space that is available and open. It just needs to be, added to the agenda. And I'm not sure if everybody is aware that this is something that could happen because it has happened multiple times before. Secondly, I'm glad to hear Mr. Dunn talk about making this part of the regular agenda because that's one of the things that I jotted. And I wouldn't even limit it to the sites and the projects that are experiencing obstacles, but just a general overview in terms of how things are going with current projects. It could be paced out so that it just keeps everybody informed. Thirdly, I'm not sure if I heard this correctly, Ms. Saminsky, but can you speak to the application is for rezoning? Because currently the floor area ratio is insufficient, or we are not asking to rezone, we're trying to capture more space in order to have a FAR that is appropriate.
It's a good question because I believe came up with Justice before my time. The county is not supportive of rezoning this property. It's on a conservation zone. So unlike Justice, we were able to go up in a zone that had a higher threshold. We are unable to do this here. The county's not going to support it. So the only thing we could do was maybe lease some FAR from the adjoining park. You can only lease what's adjoining property-wise. So right now, the Park Authority is the only option for that. One thing, yeah, no problem. One thing that we had discussed I think I put in a Friday letter ages ago at this point is, one thing we could consider is, and it might take a couple years, but right now we keep running into this problem over and over, and maybe the maximum thresholds are just too low for schools, no matter what zone it's on, right? Because that just seems to be a reoccurring theme here. So, one thing I'm kind of interested in is, should the Board of Supervisors put a motion forth to have staff at, DPD staff and land use look at the zoning ordinance and possibly consider a special definition for schools on these residential zones and maybe making that threshold a little bit higher. So we wouldn't even be in this situation in the first place for not just Centerville, but a multitude of schools.
No, thank you very much for that answer. And that's exactly what the conversation that was had with the issue at Justice, which is to have an application that would impact all of the schools so we don't continue to have these one-offs. I do want to say, Mr. Dunn, when it's time, I'd like to perhaps make a motion for us to, for CPDC to perhaps request of the chair to add this language to be part of the joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors so we can have this discussion with that body. So I'd like to make that motion when it's time, but I cannot miss the opportunity to say this. The Park Authority is not working under the auspices that we are all serving the same community. It seems to be a different approach that it has to essentially fleece Fairfax County for its coffers, which does not make any sense to me. We are one Fairfax, we are one community, and the Park Authority over and over and over again does not reflect those ideals. And the frustration that I feel with what occurred at Justice High School, Cub Run, and now this, it's at an all-time high, and we need to have those discussions with the body that appoints the park authority members, because they cannot have their cake and eat it too, in terms of they are an independent body, but then they run to the board of supervisors to fix their issues. It's either they're independent or they're not, and right now I don't think they are, but they are somewhat being, they're able to do things as if they are, but we need to have those conversations with the board of supervisors, and this is just enough. I'm over it. Sorry. Mateo, I'm finished.
Apologize, I was muted. Just two quick things before I call on Ms. Dixit. One, based on the discussion so far, one, I would just ask that Ms. Samansky bring to CPDC the next meeting a draft update in some form. I know that there had been a quarterly report, or maybe it was every 6 months report with like every project in the county. I don't know if that's what it should look like, but maybe that's a template that could be used, because I don't think I've seen a second quarterly report, unless I'm wrong, unless I missed it. So if there could be some kind of report on, construction projects, and maybe you could just elevate, like at the top, the ones that are problematic or need attention by CPDC, or the board should be aware of, so that CPDC can hear about it and then report to the school board about it, so that we're all informed. And then second, I can't remember the words you used, but what you mentioned about asking the Board of Supervisors to change the FAR. I don't know all the words, but what you said, if you could please, and Kevin, can you please make sure it's included on the next agenda, so that CPDC could take some kind of motion or language, a proposal, phrased in emotional language, so CPDC could take a vote on that to refer to the school board. And then the school board could take a vote on it, and, to formally engage, maybe through the superintendent, maybe at a board to board level, so we can resolve this, because I've heard so much about this issue and other permitting issues. And if there are any other issues that need like the board to board issue, and I know Dr. Anderson had mentioned emotion, but first, Ms. Dixit, you had a comment?
I'm new to this local government work. I've been in business for a long time, and I just fail to understand how two entities from the same government, same offshoot of Fairfax County, can be struggling to work together so much on this matter. I'm not saying, I mean, I'm sure we work very great in most of the things, but when it comes to land use, when it comes to, there is like a ongoing complicated discussions and land use. We were talking about getting a land use attorney. I'm like, we are all part of Fairfax, just like Miss and Dr. Anderson said, we are Fairfax, one Fairfax. I really want Nova Parks and everybody to come together with FCPS and work on this together. And anything I can do to, in my capacity, I would love to help. That's all. Thanks.
Sure. I mean, if it's helpful, I think in a old Friday letter, we had drafted what a follow-on or what a motion language could look like to be used by the Board of Supervisors. So maybe that's something we could bring back up and make sure you guys feel comfortable with it, and then you could figure out a best way to socialize that. But, staff had offered up what that could look like. It would just be a motion to direct staff to look at the current zoning ordinance and then finding ways to amend that to help have a very narrow piece for public schools. And then just to clarify too, if you don't mind, we have started doing quarterly facility updates. So we did one back in the fall, end of 2024, and then I submitted one for this like winter edition back in January. So if they're helpful, or if you want to, if board members have highlighted questions from it, I'm happy to discuss it in this meeting or anything like that that's helpful.
Just two quick responses. The first is if the motion was phrased as like a motion to be passed by the Board of Supervisors to their staff, it would be helpful if it was rephrased as a motion that CPDC could pass, right? Because we can't direct county staff, but if CPDC could pass a motion that could then go to the school board that could, then be voted on, right, to engage, board to board or,
Yeah.
superintendent to county executive, however is appropriate to structure it, but just, like a formal request from CPDC to the school board to board of supervisors, then board of supervisors can figure out how they want to phrase it because that's their jurisdiction and purview. But just, if it's it seems like something of paramount importance to FCPS to resolve it, not just for this case, but for potentially future cases. And Cub Run just seems to be the never-ending saga. So if we can put a nail in that coffin and move on, that would be useful. Oh, and then the report. I mean, I don't think you have to do a quarterly report every month, but maybe just pulling out of the report the things that really need board attention, right? I mean, that might be useful.
Sounds good.
I think Dr. Anderson, you had a motion you wanted to make. Do you want to put into words that Kevin could put on the agenda and we can all look at and vote on?
I will do my best. But I move that CPDC request that the Fairfax County School Board place on the agenda. Ooh, this is going to be long. An opportunity place on the agenda for the for the joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors, the facilities infrastructure agenda topic. I'll stop there. It got pretty long.
Kevin, are you able to share your screen so we can all look at that?
Yeah, just give me one
The
sec.
essence is that I'd like for us to make a motion to ask the chair to add this to the agenda for our meeting with the Board of Supervisors for us to include a CIP facilities line. So feel free to word it however you'd like, Kevin, to capture that essence. It's very windy. I was not ready for that.
Oh, that's probably why my lights were flickering on and off.
Mm.
Dr. Anderson, does that catch it, or did you want to add anything else?
You know what? That captures it. It's fine.
Sorry, I didn't follow. What is the facilities infrastructure agenda topic?
I guess that part is not necessary for, let me see, to add on the agenda for the joint meeting, discussions on facilities slash yeah, on facilities matters. How about that? We could keep it fairly broad. But it's really with an eye to talk about how can we better be collaborative on these matters. And we could raise any and all of these issues from land use, zoning, this specific project. It should be broad so that we have latitude to do all of that in our conversations with them at the meeting.
Okay. Uh, Ms. Dixit, would you like to second the motion or?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Great, that was a wonderful discussion. Okay, moving on to agenda item 1.07. I don't think we provided Ms. Samansky much guidance on this issue, so I propose to move 1.07 to the next queue. But I know that there have been a lot of different renovation queues of different kinds, tracked, untracked, and some untracked becoming tracked. And I just perhaps the next CPDC meeting, similar to our discussion 1.05, just obtaining some clarity. I think I'd previously discussed with you, Ms. Samansky, it'd be great to have just a one pager, like a list of what are all of our lists, you know, so we can have that clarity, because I know there's some that exist and some that are under development. Oh, this is inspiring a lot of questions. Okay, Ms. Dixit.
No, sorry, I just have to I forgot to put my hand down.
Oh, okay. Dr. Anderson.
And just looking at the agenda, I guess I'm asking for consideration for us to perhaps reschedule item 1.08 because it's a very heavy item and I think we need a little bit more time.
Yep.
And it seems as if we can knock out the rest with the 40 minutes that we have remaining. I just don't see us being able to do that justice in just the time that we have left.
That works for me, without objection. Any objection? Okay. So moving on to 1.09, I think I've already provided, I think I've talked enough, so I'm gonna cut myself off. 1.10, updates from FPAC. Ms. Sozik, you've already spoken a bit, but any other updates you wanted to share? Any other work that's going on that you wanted to provide an update on?
Sure. The only thing I wanted to reiterate that the retreat is on March 15th, and we're going to see Brookfield before the large renovation starts. As you may or may not know, FPAC wanted to follow a renovation pretty much from the get-go, just to, advise as we could along the way. We've already had an initial tour, but now that some staging, I know there's some learning cottages that have been placed out back, just to get a feel for what the actual process is. And we're also working diligently on our memos that will be part of our annual report, which is due at the end of May. But like I said, if we might be able to prioritize that one, I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's pretty. We're just plodding along.
And can you just mention for CPDC's awareness, the memos you're working on? Not you, but FPAC.
Right. We're working on the P3, the two that we talked about earlier, and I can't remember what the third one is because some of our newer members are working on that one. And I actually pulled myself off of that work because I'm trying to focus on the boundaries, since I'm on the superintendent's advisory committee. So I purposely did not get on a committee. So I'll look those up while we're talking and come back if you really want to know. But it's in our meeting agenda, our minutes from 3 meetings ago, I think, but I can look that up for you.
Oh,
Miss
well, if
Herman is on the meeting,
Oh,
Mr. Dunn.
oh,
I don't know if
Katie
you
can probably
noticed
tell
it.
you. She has everybody and who's on what committee. Hi, Katie, take it away.
Hey there. Sorry, I had to do a surprise reboot of my laptop right then and there. So I apologize. It's one of those ones you can't delay. I'm sorry. What was the question again?
oh, the question is if you could just briefly mention the memos that are being worked on by FPAC, just for CPDC's awareness and by extension the school
Yes.
board's awareness.
Right. So one of the items we worked on was again the charter. That was a big thing. The second item is considerations for procurement policies. The third item is reducing costs during renovation projects. And then the fourth one is efficient permitting strategies.
Great. And is the response to the P3 report and staff response, is that in addition to those memos you just listed, or is that one of those topics?
It'll be part of the second one I mentioned, which is the considerations for procurement policies.
Okay. Any other discussion under this agenda item? Nope. Okay. And then last we have updates from from Ms. Szymanski, agenda item 1.11. Ms. Szymanski, I know we've had extensive discussion. Any other issues you'd like to raise or bring to our attention?
No, I feel like we've all talked a lot in the last month between the follow-on submission and the CIP and EL11, and we did a quarterly report. So, yeah, like I said, if I have a big issue, I try to put it in a Friday letter. So the Town of Herndon one, I think I gave you guys since we last met. But like I said, it was more for awareness because I hope things are going to move in the right direction in the next couple weeks. And then, yeah, I'm working with Dr. Reed closely on Centerville and, appreciate the ideas to talk about this at a broader level with the zoning ordinance. And yeah, we have 2 projects out to bid right now, Herndon and Armstrong. And that'll be the last of our 6 elementary schools that we were looking to do and bid in FY25, which is good. So we're going to beat that spring rush, which is nice. So we can have construction start in earnest for all those projects this summer. That's all.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Well, with that, we're at agenda item 1.12, adjournment. Then any other issues anyone wanted to cover? Just checking. Okay. The next CPDC meeting will be on March 20th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in Gatehouse Room 1600. The Fairfax County School Board Comprehensive Planning and Development Committee is adjourned as of 8:22 p.m. I hope everyone has